It was supposed to be just another day, nothing out of the ordinary. My life had been smooth, predictable even, with a successful career, a comfortable home, and a lifestyle that many would envy. But what happened next changed everything. It all started with a phone call I received one morning from Riverbend Country Club, a prestigious golf course in our neighborhood that I had long admired. I had been eyeing membership for months, eagerly waiting for the moment when I would finally take that step. I knew it would be a challenge. Membership was exclusive, only for those with a certain reputation and a hefty bank balance. But I figured with my success, I was more than qualified. I'd worked hard for everything I had, and joining Riverbend seemed like the next logical step in my journey. So, with that in mind, I decided to give it a shot. I submitted my application, hoping for the best. I imagined myself there, playing golf on lush greens, hosting meetings, networking with the most influential people in the area. The possibilities seemed endless. A week later, I received a letter from the club. I eagerly ripped open the envelope, expecting to see that coveted acceptance letter, but instead, I found a single sheet of paper with the words that would change the course of my life. "We regret to inform you that your application for membership has been declined. After careful consideration, the committee has decided not to offer you membership at this time." I stared at the letter, shocked. I couldn't believe it. I had all the credentials, money, influence, success, and yet they had rejected me. Why? Why had I been excluded from a place I thought I belonged? The rejection stung more than I had anticipated. It felt personal. It felt like a reminder that no matter how hard you try, some doors just aren't meant for you. I sat there, holding the letter, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. How could they do this to me? How could they just shut me out without even giving me a chance? As the anger simmered, something shifted inside me. Maybe they didn't want me in their club, but I wasn't going to let them decide my future. At that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for a spot in their club. I was going to take control. I spent the next few days in a state of quiet contemplation. I knew what I had to do, but part of me was still reluctant to take the plunge. The more I thought about it, the more the idea of defying their rejection began to fuel a fire within me. Why should I let them dictate who gets access to the best that life has to offer? The golf course, the club, the elite circles, they didn't define me. I defined myself. After a few sleepless nights, I put the wheels in motion. I contacted a real estate agent and instructed them to research the Riverbend Country Club's property. I wanted to know everything: the land value, the club's financials, and who owned it. The more I learned, the clearer my vision became. The club, a place that had so casually turned me away, was underperforming financially. The owner had made a series of bad investments and was struggling to maintain the upkeep of the property. It seemed too perfect. I began reaching out to financial advisors, gathering the funds I would need for what seemed like an impossible venture. I was already wealthy, but this would require a massive effort, even for me. I wasn't just buying a piece of land. I was about to take over a place that had rejected me, to make it mine, to prove a point. As I got more involved with the details, I realized the power I would have. If I bought the property, I could reshape everything: the golf course, the membership rules, the culture. No longer would they be the ones making the decisions about who gets to play and who gets excluded. I would take control, and I would make it a place where everyone who truly wanted to be there could belong. The way I had been rejected would not define the club's future. Instead, I would define it. I quickly moved from the research phase to action. I called up my trusted contacts in real estate, made a few strategic moves, and within weeks, I was on my way to owning the property outright. The moment the deal was finalized, I felt a surge of satisfaction that I couldn't quite explain. I had gone from being rejected, humiliated, and overlooked to becoming the owner of the very place that had once dismissed me. But my plans weren't just about ownership. They were about reshaping this space into something entirely different. I began to see the possibilities: a modern approach to membership, a more inclusive atmosphere, redefining what it meant to be a member of Riverbend. The traditional old guard had run it into the ground, but I had the means, the vision, and the resources to build something new, something that would thrive. With the signing of the final documents, I was officially the owner of the Riverbend Country Club, but I wasn't going to stop there. I had a bigger plan. I would make the club mine, and I would make sure the people who had rejected me would regret ever turning me away. The first day I stepped onto the property as the new owner, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The lush fairways, the elegant clubhouse, it all seemed to hum with potential. But as I walked around, I realized the extent of the task ahead of me. This wasn't just about ownership. It was about transforming a place that had become stale, exclusive, and ultimately stuck in the past. I immediately began making changes. I hired a new management team, one that shared my vision for an inclusive, forward-thinking club. I wanted to modernize Riverbend, to take it from a stuffily exclusive, outdated establishment and turn it into a vibrant community for golfers, families, and people from all walks of life who simply wanted to be part of something better. I also started reviewing the membership policy. Riverbend had always been a country club for the elite, and its membership fees were astronomical. Only the wealthiest of the wealthy could afford it. But I saw something different. I believed that the spirit of the game, golf itself, was about more than just money. It was about community, connections, and fair competition. I had the power to make this club more welcoming, more accessible, and in doing so, more successful. I made the decision to lower the barrier to entry for new members. The membership fees were adjusted to be more inclusive, with a focus on cultivating talent over exclusivity. I knew this would upset some of the old guard, but I didn't care. Change was necessary. If Riverbend was going to thrive, it had to evolve. But the changes weren't just financial. I focused on improving the facilities too. I upgraded the course, added new amenities like a fitness center and a cafe, and restructured the staff to create a more customer-friendly environment. Every decision I made was aimed at making the place feel different, more alive, more open, and more connected to the people who would breathe new life into it. One of my first moves was to personally call the club's previous members, the ones who had rejected me when I first applied. I didn't hold a grudge, though. I wasn't doing this to get back at them. I wanted to show them that I wasn't just someone who had bought the club out of spite. I wanted them to see the transformation through my eyes. I wanted them to see that this wasn't just about ownership, it was about leadership. The first one I called was Timothy Harrington, one of the founding members. He had been one of the strongest voices on the membership committee when my application was rejected. I had remembered his face, his disdainful look when he read my name on the list. He was one of the ones who had whispered to the others, making sure I wasn't accepted. Now, as the owner of the club, I was calling him directly. "Timothy?" I said when he picked up the phone. "It's James, the new owner of Riverbend. I just wanted to let you know that we've made some significant changes. The club is getting a refresh, and I'd love for you to come by and see what we're doing. I think you'll like it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could tell he was processing the information, his mind probably racing to find the words. Finally, he spoke. "You've bought the club? Well, I suppose congratulations are in order, though I'm not sure how I feel about some of the changes I've heard about." "I understand," I replied calmly. "Change can be difficult, but I think you'll find that these changes will be for the better. We're focused on creating a more vibrant, welcoming environment for everyone who's passionate about golf. It's not about exclusion, it's about connection and growth." Timothy was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the doubt in his voice when he finally spoke again. "You've got a lot of work ahead of you, James, but I'll come by. If nothing else, it'll be interesting to see what you've done." "Looking forward to it," I said with a smile. "I'll see you soon." After the call ended, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The old guard might not agree with my vision, but they would see. They would have no choice but to respect what I was building. As the weeks went by, the transformation at Riverbend Country Club became more evident. The changes I had made were starting to take shape. The course was looking better than ever, the new facilities were attracting attention, and the buzz around town was growing. It wasn't long before the first round of new members started signing up, eager to experience what the club had become. I was seeing the results of my decisions, but the real challenge wasn't just about the physical improvements, it was about shifting the culture. Riverbend had always been about exclusivity, and changing that mindset was going to take time. Some of the older members were hesitant, not quite sure what to make of the new direction, but there were others who welcomed the changes with open arms. The golf community, it turned out, was filled with people who appreciated the spirit of the game, not the prestige that came with it. Then, one afternoon, I received a call that would change the course of everything. It was from Timothy Harrington, the founding member I had spoken to on the phone weeks ago. I hadn't expected to hear from him again after our conversation, but he had caught wind of the success the club was having and wanted to come see the changes for himself. "James," Timothy said, his voice calm but with a hint of curiosity, "I've been hearing a lot about the improvements at Riverbend. I wanted to stop by and see for myself how things are going. Can we meet?" I smiled. I knew this day would come. Timothy and the others from the old guard weren't going to be able to ignore the changes forever. "Of course, Timothy," I said. "I'd be happy to show you around. We've made a lot of progress since the last time we spoke." We agreed to meet the following day, and as I prepared for his visit, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and anticipation. I had worked tirelessly to make the changes I believed in, and now I was going to get the chance to show someone who had doubted me what I had done. The next day, Timothy arrived at the club. He walked in with his usual air of superiority, but there was something different about him. He was curious, genuinely curious to see what I had accomplished. As we walked through the newly renovated areas, I watched his face as he took it all in. The new, modern facilities were a far cry from the stuffy, outdated spaces of the past. The members now, younger and more diverse, were interacting with a sense of camaraderie I hadn't seen before. "So, what do you think?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but feeling the weight of the moment. This was the test. If Timothy saw the value in these changes, maybe the others would too. He stopped in front of the clubhouse, his eyes scanning the horizon. After a long pause, he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You've really done something here," he said finally, his tone softer than it had been when we first spoke. "I have to admit, when I heard you had bought the place, I thought it was going to go under, but this is different. I'm seeing what you were trying to do now. You've made it into something more." I felt a sense of triumph wash over me, but I didn't let it show on my face. "It wasn't just about the renovations," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's about creating a culture where everyone feels like they belong, not just the select few who could afford to join before." Timothy nodded slowly, as though mulling over my words. "You've certainly shaken things up," he said, "but I have to say, I'm starting to believe that maybe this wasn't such a bad thing after all." I smiled, a quiet satisfaction settling in. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when the old guard would finally see that I wasn't just about making a statement. I was about creating something that could last. Something that everyone could be a part of. "You've done well," Timothy added. "I'll admit, I was wrong about you. I thought you were just another outsider trying to change things for the worse. But now, I see that you've got something real here. I'll be back." That was all I needed to hear. I had earned his respect. More importantly, I had earned the respect of the community I was building. I wasn't just a person who had bought the club out of spite. I was someone who had reimagined it, turned it into a place that was inclusive, vibrant, and thriving. As Timothy walked away, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot, but this moment, this recognition from someone who had been one of my harshest critics, felt like a victory. As the months passed, Riverbend Country Club began to thrive in ways I hadn't even anticipated. The changes I had implemented were not just cosmetic, they were deep, fundamental shifts that brought the club back to life. The once exclusive, high-priced atmosphere was now inclusive and welcoming. Membership surged as new faces joined, eager to be a part of something that was more than just a country club. It was a community. I took pride in seeing the members mingling freely, sharing stories over drinks, laughing together on the course, and forging relationships that weren't based on wealth or status, but on a shared love for the game of golf. The club had transformed from a place of exclusion into one where everyone could feel at home. But the real test, I knew, was going to come when the old guard fully realized the scale of what I had done. The real challenge wasn't the physical changes, it was shifting the culture, convincing the people who had rejected me to embrace this new vision. I was sitting in my office one afternoon when the door opened. I looked up to see Timothy Harrington step in, a familiar air of pride in his posture. He had been a prominent member of the club for decades, and his opinion carried weight. But it wasn't just about what he thought anymore, it was about the larger shift that was happening within the entire community. "I've been hearing a lot about the changes you've made here, James," Timothy began, his voice steady but with an edge of uncertainty. "And I have to say, I didn't think it would work. But after seeing it for myself, I was wrong. You've turned this place into something much bigger than any of us could have imagined." I leaned back in my chair, taking a moment to process what he was saying. Timothy had been one of the loudest voices against my ideas, and to hear him acknowledge the success of the changes was a moment of validation I hadn't expected to come so soon. "You know, I never would have thought it would be possible, but you've built something that's more than just a golf club," he continued. "You've created a community, a place where people feel welcome, and that's something I didn't expect." "I didn't expect it either," I said with a slight smile. "But sometimes you have to take a risk to make a real difference, and that's what I did." Timothy nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, gold-embellished envelope. He handed it to me with a serious expression. "I know it doesn't mean much coming from me, but this is an official invitation. I'm inviting you to be our honorary member, not just for what you've done for the club, but for the kind of person you are. We respect that, James, and we want you to know that you've earned a place here, not as an outsider, but as someone who has changed us all for the better." I stared at the envelope in my hand, stunned. This wasn't just a membership, it was a symbol of respect, of acknowledgement that I had not only succeeded in my vision, but had earned the right to be part of something bigger than myself. It was proof that the once closed doors had finally been opened for me, and for anyone else who dared to believe in something different. I looked up at Timothy, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say," he replied with a smile of his own. "You've already said it with your actions." And just like that, I knew I had finally won, not just in the business sense, but in a much deeper, more meaningful way. I had redefined what it meant to be a part of this community. The old barriers had been broken, and I had shown everyone, including myself, that success wasn't just about money or power. It was about vision, determination, and the courage to change the status quo. As Timothy left, I stood there for a moment, the weight of everything I had achieved settling in. Riverbend Country Club was no longer just a symbol of rejection. It was my victory, and the victory of everyone who had once been excluded. It was a testament to the fact that no matter how hard the world may push against you, you can always push back harder. And when you do, the doors that once seemed closed will open wide. The journey had come full circle, from rejection to redemption, from being labeled an outsider to becoming an integral part of the community. And as I looked out over the sprawling grounds of the club, I knew that this was just the beginning. This was my legacy, and it was only going to grow from here.